Welcome back to the Adam Schefter podcast as we head out of week 6 and straight into week 7, 3 weeks before the NFL trade deadline, the night of my NBA, ESPN, fantasy basketball war room draft. And I'm not going to brag, Ty Schmit, but I have won championships in 4 of the last 7 years. I've hoisted the trophy 4 times. And I've been calling around to my NBA counterparts and friends, asking for little tips as to who to draft tonight, 8:30 Eastern, Tuesday, October 14th, in my ESPN NBA Fantasy Draft. I don't know if people realize this, but to me, this is like the guys that you're going to be married to, dating for the next 4 or 5 months. Like, these are the guys I'm going to be living with. I better love them. So I'm very excited about that. All right, let's get ahead to football because there is a lot to get to this morning, to help break us down, to help look ahead to week 7. My friend, my colleague, the host of the Pat McAfee Show, Ty Schmit, also known as the host of this week's Six Pack.
Thank you very much, Schefty. Great to be back with you as always. Hey, listen, I know we're in the meat of things right now. We got the trade deadline coming up. Teams are kind of starting to declare to the league who they are. But, man, doesn't it feel like the season is just going by so fast? We're already going into week 7. It seems like just the other day we were talking about Eagles-Cowboys on opening night. It's crazy, but great weekend of football. Great weekend of football. But, man, it does feel like it's going by so fast.
You know, it's funny you say that because I always have certain road marks that tell me where the season is and how fast it's moving. And I agree with you that it's moved fast. We're going into week 7. But I always feel like there's a little bit of a lull in terms of how fast it moves from, let's just say, post-trade deadline, which would be November 4th this year, to Thanksgiving. And I have always found that once we get to Thanksgiving, that's when the NFL schedule flies. From that point on, like it's Thanksgiving, and the next thing you know, it's Super Bowl. Like, bam, just like that. That always flies. But the first 6 weeks have gone pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, we're kind of starting to get a better picture. I think it's kind of a weird first 6 weeks for some teams who we expected to make deep playoff runs or be around there in the end. And we have some kind of new contenders, which is always great. The parity in the league right now, everyone always wants to talk about that. So we'll see, but let's get right into the six-pack, Schefty, starting with topic number 1. We had a great Monday night doubleheader last night. I mean, I think when you saw the games, you kind of knew, okay, here we go. We're going to get 2 entertaining games. What were your biggest takeaways from last night?
Well, first of all, Atlanta at home is a tough out. But the Falcons beat the Bills. The Bills lose 2 straight going into their bye. And that announces to me that the New England Patriots, who are now in first place in the AFC East, are not only going to vie for a playoff spot, but they're going to vie for the division lead. Now, it was funny. I had some conversations. I saw Robert Kraft at an event. We did a podcast with him at the Fanatics event in June. And I said to him back then, I'm like, Mr. Kraft, RKK, I have a feeling you're going to compete for the division title this year. And he said, don't tell anyone, but I think so too. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have some fun with your head coach. So I texted Mike Vrabel that day and I go, hey, just talking to RKK, we both expect you to win the division this year. And he said, thanks for ruining my start of my vacation and putting the pressure on. I said, my pleasure, Mike. Enjoy your time off. And I really felt like Drake May was going to take a jump. Mike Vrabel was going to be in charge. And because of those things, New England was going to have a real chance to compete with the Bills. Now, of course, the Bills they're an elite team. But I just felt like you see this every year. It reminded me a little bit of Washington and Philadelphia last year, where Washington made a jump. They weren't ready to win the division, but they were there to play with Philadelphia, and they got to the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. And I felt like New England was going to be in the same spot, and here we are going into the 7th week, and New England's in first place right now. Now, I know they're tied, but they beat Buffalo at Buffalo. So New England, by way of Monday night's game, now is in a great position, and it's reaffirmed their standing. And and we'll get to this in this podcast, Mike Vrabel this week. Oh my God, you couldn't come up with a better matchup this week with Mike Vrabel leading his team into Tennessee, the organization that fired him, to face the team that just fired its head coach. Okay, we'll get to that in a little bit. The second game of the doubleheader, we were on Monday Night Countdown, and everybody was picking Washington, and I sat there with Scott Van Pelt and Ryan Clark and Jason Kelsey, and I shook my head. And Mike Greenberg on Get Up has gotten very adept at doing this. If everybody is now picking a team, he goes the opposite way, which is exactly what happened. Everybody picked Buffalo. He picked Atlanta. Everybody picked Washington. He picked Chicago. Greeny looks like a genius today. And I just felt like the game last year where Chicago lost in Washington, that was the first of 10 straight losses. The Bears were 4-2 going into that game in Washington when the Commanders caught the Hail Mary. Chicago never recovered. It fired its head coach, and that was the start of getting Ben Johnson to Chicago. And I just felt like that game last night was going to have an awful lot of meaning to the Bears franchise, to everybody there, to help turn it around. And again, the game in Washington last year helped Ben Johnson arrive in Chicago. And then the game in Washington last night announced his arrival in Chicago. Because the Bears are here. They're a good team. He's got them playing the right way. And they were able to get a little bit of revenge against the team that really derailed their season last year. By the way, with a kicker, Jake Moody, who got his own personal revenge, signed to the active roster that day, kicks 4 field goals, including the game winner in the rain and wind. Good for Jake Moody, a Michigan man. Happy to see that happen from Ty.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of a pretty clear-cut sign that the culture is changing in Chicago and starting to kind of take place, because throughout my lifetime, give or take a few years, the Bears do not win that game last night in terms of things bouncing their way with the mishandled snap, fumble, whatever you want to call it, for them to even be in position to go down and kick a field goal. And then I've seen the Bears miss that field goal to win the game 1,000 times in my lifetime. So just and this is what we expected with Ben Johnson. It's like, hey, this guy is coming in not only to get Caleb to kind of reach his potential, but they need someone who's a little bit of a hard ass, and they need some accountability and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of showing through. And then on the flip side, like you said, I mean, Buffalo needs to figure out how to stop the run. They're still kind of banged up, but you have a guy like Josh Allen. I don't think there's really any reason to panic. He's healthy.
No.
They'll get things figured out. And I think overall, like you said, Atlanta kind of announced like, hey, we're probably better than everyone realized.
It was an interesting Monday night with a lot of different thoughts that come out of it. Buffalo's still going to be there in the end. Buffalo's still an elite team. But my point is they have competition. They have competition not just in their conference with the Chiefs, but in their division with New England. And it's not going to be as simple for Buffalo as it might have been in some of these other years.
Yeah, and we'll see how they react to that, because, the last couple of years, it seems like they've had the division wrapped up by Halloween, and it's kind of, picking your spots and, hey, let's go get the number 1 seed. Well, we that might not be the case this year. So 2 great games on Monday Night Football, and we'll see what happens with all 4 of those teams. That was a very good showcase last night.
Another doubleheader next week too, Ty.
I know, and another London game. I don't know what's happening, but I kind of love it. Let's move on to topic number 2, Schefter. You just mentioned Tennessee moving on. It was funny. You came on Pat's show yesterday, and someone asked you about the coach's hot seat, and you basically said, hey, I don't think we're going to get anything today or
soon.
Anytime soon.
An hour later.
Yeah, you said, hey, but that doesn't mean as soon as I leave the show, 5 minutes from now, someone could be let go. Will and behold, Brian Callahan gets fired not too long about
Amazing.
that. What do you have on that situation, and then the other coaches who might be on the hot seat currently?
I think what happens here is I think the people across the league felt like Tennessee would be patient with Brian Callahan. Not that he would survive after the year. I think everybody recognized that his job was in trouble. He had a 4-19 record. Cam Ward wasn't being protected, and they were going to make a change. I just didn't think it was going to be on Monday, October 13th, that change was going to come. But you know what happens? I don't care what they say to me. When the owner wants something done, things get done. And in my mind, nobody said this to me. I believe Amy Adams Strunk wanted to make a change. They have a new stadium to sell. She had seen enough. The number one pick is not being protected. And so they decided to make the change. Again, it was sooner than I expected it to be. I was not expecting it to be at that moment when it came down. So they have been a model of instability. They fired their general manager that built a really strong team, John Robinson. They replaced him with Rand Carthon. They fired Mike Vrabel, who's gone on to do some pretty good things in New England. They fired Rand Carthon, and now they fired Brian Callahan. So they fired each of their last two GMs and head coaches in recent years. And you can't say the organization is better off without Mike Vrabel right now. Mike McCoy is going to be the interim head coach. And again, I know that there are no script writers, but whoever the hell comes up with these ideas, like how does the NFL know to schedule the Patriots in Tennessee in a game that ordinarily wouldn't have a lot of juice, that now becomes something of a marquee matchup on Sunday with Vrabel going back there to face the team that just fired its head coach to try to fill the job that he once had, that he's still going to be salty about. Doing Get Up with Teddy Bruschi on Monday. This came up. Like, Mike Vrabel is going to be pissed off and salty about going there. Not going to say it, not going to admit it, but absolutely remembers it. And Teddy's like, you kidding me? He still remembers the one time I picked against the Titans when he was the head coach on Sunday Countdown. He's still mad at me about that. So, Vrabel's going to remember this on Sunday for sure.
Yeah, and when I saw the firing and knowing that they played the Pats next week, part of me was almost like, I wonder if this wasn't to avoid getting beat 38-0 next week and having it be 10 times louder. Having it be, hey, the guy you fired just walloped the guy you replaced, and then, the firestorm that comes with that. And obviously, all the stuff on the field isn't good. I mean, they're arguably the worst team in the NFL, and you really got to be careful with, hey, we got to make sure that this number one draft pick doesn't end up just getting kind of swept away in the wind. But I think part of it, too, is the way he kind of represents the team and everything, just being very surly and short and kind of off-putting in his press conferences. You can do that kind of stuff when you're Bill Belichick, when you've won a bunch of Super Bowls and all you do is win, because people kind of just, okay, whatever, he's earned that. You can't really do that when you're 4-19. You can't be, just terrible to the media, very short, because then it's like, hey, this guy's not getting it done on the field. And then when we meet with him, he's disrespectful to everybody. He won't answer questions. It was bad from the beginning, and now you get into the point, when Cam Ward starts saying all the stuff he's saying, it's like, okay, I think it's time to make a change. We need to make sure that we get this guy back on the right path.
Well, by the way, just to point out, when the quarterback comes out and makes a statement the way Cam Ward did, we ask. And we have another quarterback in the league coming out and making statements about his team. Those are indictments on the head coaches, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And the owners obviously have to take note. You raise an interesting point. I wonder, and I don't know the answer to this, if the Titans weren't playing the Patriots this week, would they have fired Brian Callahan on Monday? If they were playing, they were playing the Houston Texans this week, they were playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, would Brian Callahan have gotten fired? I guess it doesn't matter because eventually he was going to get fired. I just don't know that it was going to come that quick. Maybe the upcoming matchup had something to do with it. Maybe it didn't, but it's an interesting question you raised there, Ty.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll see what happens there, but and again, that's kind of just that's a fun little thing to think of, but it's been bad post game every week with them, regardless of who they played. So maybe that's digging for fool's gold, but it is something to think about. And we'll see what happens with these other coaches who are on the hot seat, because like you said, there's a chance that it's probably not going to happen until a little bit later in the season if guys are going to get fired. But if you have another stinker on a Sunday when things are when the entire building is eroding, maybe some of these owners decide, hey, a change needs to happen now. So we'll see. Let's move on to topic number 3, Schefty. You mentioned on Pat's show and on this show last week that you think we're going to get a flurry of trades in the next 3 weeks and that it's going to be a pretty active trade deadline. As of right now, have you softened on that stance at all, or is that still what you're thinking?
No, listen, I went back and looked at the numbers, and I think this is where you come out and figure that we're going to get a lot of activity. Last week alone, once we got to the month of October, we got 3 trades. 3 last week. Joe Flacco was traded to the Cincinnati Bengals. We had the Jaguars and the Browns swapping cornerbacks, and we had the Ravens and Chargers, Adafe Owe for safety and picks. 3 trades last week. But just go back and look at it, Ty. Football has become as interesting as basketball and baseball at the trade deadline. It used to be that wasn't the case. 10 years ago, in 2015, in the month of October, leading up to the trade deadline, there were 4 trades made in all. 4. There were 3 last week alone. We haven't gotten one yet this week, but I'll be surprised if the week comes and goes without a trade. I don't know who's getting traded, but I'll be surprised. And I would say that between now and the Tuesday, November 4th trade deadline, 3 weeks from today, my guess is we'll get, the over-under would be 15 more trades. 15 more trades. Don't know who. Don't know the team. I mean, I have an idea of some players that are available, like in Miami, Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. I could see them being traded by the deadline. We'll see how it plays out. But you're going to see the teams that are losing try to get extra draft pick capital for next spring. And you're going to see teams that are winning try to fill some holes that they need to address as they enter the second half of the season. So, again, they're going to be sellers. They're going to be buyers. It's going to keep things busy and interesting. And I expect there to be a decent number of trades between now and the deadline.
For some of these teams who have, I don't want to say been eliminated already, but like these teams like Miami and some of those teams who, like, you kind of just know. Yeah, the Jets. Playoffs aren't going to happen this year. Do you think anything that happens in the next couple weeks will change that? Or do you think they're firmly declaring, like, hey, we will be selling at the deadline?
The Jets are the only winless team in football. They haven't won a game. As you said, they're not making the playoffs. So if you're not making the playoffs and you have a guy like Breece Hall, now they're not looking to deal Breece Hall. They'd like to keep Breece Hall. But there might be a team that needs a running back here in the next few weeks that says, you know what? I know you don't want to trade Breece Hall, but what if we gave you a 3rd round pick, a 3 and a 7? We could take that. And you're the Jets and you're thinking, you know what? We're not going anywhere this year. We're not going to make the playoffs. Let's take the 3 and the 7. Let's move on. Let's start building up our draft capital. So I think any team that's in that spot that knows that the playoffs are a pipe dream, why would you not consider any and everything to make your team better? Why would you not do that?
What about like the Ravens? Do you think that they will hold off as long as possible because there is still that glimmer of, hey, post-bye, we get Lamar back healthy?
I know they traded Adafe Owe last week, but the truth of the matter is his name had come up in trade conversations and trade talks last spring, this past summer. Like, that was not a surprise. His contract was coming up. I don't think they were re-signing him. I think the Ravens, it's interesting because they have a bye this week. But they come out of the bye. Lamar Jackson comes back. They're 1-5 right now. And the Steelers are 4-1. And they play the Steelers twice. Have you looked at the Ravens' schedule in the second half of the year?
I haven't. Is it soft or pretty tough?
Let me read you Baltimore's schedule here in the upcoming weeks once the Ravens get through their bye. Home for Chicago. You like that matchup?
Well, a lot less than I did, at 5 o'clock last
night. A winnable
night.
game, correct?
For sure.
At Miami.
Yes.
At Minnesota. Tough game.
But I still, if with a healthy Lamar and healthy, the top paid players that they're missing, I still like Baltimore in that.
At Cleveland.
Well, you never know with the AFC North, but yes.
Home for 3 straight home games. Jets, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh.
Wow. Okay. So, things aren't exactly doom and gloom if they can get a little bit healthier.
And so I think Baltimore will look to add some help. Like, again, the season's been an outright disaster so far. Nothing's gone the Ravens' way. Do I think the Ravens are selling off parts? No. Do I think that they would buy? Not only do I think that could happen, I almost expect it to happen. I expect them to try to plug a couple of holes here before the trade deadline.
Okay, so that's big news because I think a lot of casual fans, if you are a team that's in the playoff conversation right now, you look at the Ravens, you look at all the, big time names they have, you see their record, and you maybe just assume, hey, they just traded Adafe Owe. There's a good chance that we might be able to go pick some parts off this team that is typically
Let
a
me say
perennial
this.
Super Bowl
I
contender.
could see them trading another player or two.
Okay.
So I think they're going both ways here. Like, I think there are some guys that they'll listen on where they're deep at, but I think that they're going to be in the market to try to also upgrade their roster and improve where they're a little lean and weak right now.
Okay. So if you're a Ravens fan and you've been, just living and dying with the last couple weeks and probably not feeling very great going into the bye week about where you guys are, just listen to that schedule Schefter just said. Like, there is still hope for the Baltimore
Absolutely.
Ravens.
And they played Steelers twice. Like,
exactly.
Look, they're playing terrible. They've got to play significantly better. The defense is still horrendous. They're not going to solve that overnight. Lamar only helps the offense, so it changes a lot. They got issues, but they are not out of it. They are not out of it yet. Their margin of error is greatly reduced, but they are not dead.
Okay, good to know. So we'll keep an eye on the trade activity over the next few weeks, and I'm sure you'll be about as locked into that as any other time of the season. I know you'll be busy, Schefter. Let's move on to topic number 4. We talk about a team who is maybe going the wrong way. This is just kind of a message to the entire NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs are coming. They looked unbelievable against the Lions. A lot of people want to, complain about the refs or whatever, but it seems like that was kind of the announcement to NFL fans and to the league. Like, hey, our demise was greatly exaggerated. We still have Patrick Mahomes. We still have Andy Reid. We're going to be just fine.
A couple of things to keep in mind about the Kansas City Chiefs as they get ready for this week's game against the Las Vegas Raiders. They get back Rashee Rice this week. Rashee Rice is a top 10 receiver. Patrick Mahomes' favorite target. Do you remember what a machine he was last year before he got hurt? Like the first 3?
Yes.
He was a little bit like Puka Nacua is right now. That was Rashee Rice last year. Now we'll see if he can get back to that form. But boy, oh boy, that's interesting. You know what else is interesting? On the Chiefs' schedule, their remaining 11 games, they are favored in all 11.
Okay.
Favored in all 11. The Chiefs may not be an underdog again the rest of the year, depending on health. Now, they do have a tough game at Buffalo on November 2nd, but they are now in the midst of a 3-game home stretch. Beat Detroit Sunday night, home for Vegas, home for Washington, before playing at Buffalo and then a bye. Then they come back, play at Denver, home for Indy, at Dallas, Houston, Chargers, at Tennessee, Denver, at Vegas. Now, again, they're getting better. Last year, they scored 30 points 2 times all season. They've already scored 30 points twice in 6 games this season. Now they get back Rice. So I just think when you have Mahomes and you have Travis Kelce and you got Andy Reid and Chris Jones, who now has to play inspired football, it's a mistake to count out the Chiefs. Just like I think it's a mistake to count out the Ravens right now, although I'm not encouraged by what I've seen in Baltimore. The Chiefs are coming. They're back. And I think right now, today, I think you'd have to look at them as the favorite in the AFC today.
Yeah, I don't think I would argue with that because I think last year we heard Patrick Mahomes say, or I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, but he basically said, like, I need to learn how to play a little bit differently with how our offense is currently constructed. Like, we're not the team that had Tyreek Hill and won the Super Bowl. And, I'm not going to throw 50 touchdowns this year. I think this year he kind of realized, like, I need to put the cape back on. I need to be Superman because the way we talk about Baker and just his kind of demeanor and attitude and how he supplies juice for his entire team. Mahomes taking off and running and taking some of those hits he's been taking, and he's seeking out contact. He's not avoiding it. He's fighting for those extra yards. I think that just spreads an electricity throughout the entire team. And then we've seen him when it's go time, when you need to go score a touchdown or it's 4th down, he's putting it on himself to kind of remind everyone, like, hey, there's a reason people kind of were saying I was the next Brady, is because I can unlock that when I need to. And I think we've seen him do that the last couple weeks.
There was no doubt in my mind after they lost the Super Bowl that he was going to come back inspired this year and play at a high, high level. And he's done that. He's in the MVP conversation with Baker Mayfield. And I think that'll continue. And like I said, they're favorites to win every game. And they are, in my mind, the team to beat in the AFC right now.
Yeah, so keep that in mind if you're a fan of a team who's got the Chiefs coming to town, or you're going to Kansas City. This isn't the team that was kind of limping the first couple weeks of the season. They look like they're kind of rolling on all cylinders right now. Let's move on to topic number 5, Schefty. We've had a lot of great storylines so far this year. Players in new places playing unbelievable, kind of a second, chance at stardom in the NFL. Of everything that you've seen, what do you currently think has been the best story of the season so far?
Baker Mayfield, and it's not close. A guy that we wrote off, or the people wrote off, when he was in Cleveland, when he was in Carolina. The Rams claimed him on waivers once the Panthers cut him. He came in on that Thursday night game and helped them win on a short week. But Tampa's incredible. Like, you look at what's going on. They lost 2 starting offensive linemen to season-ending injuries. They played the first quarter of the season without Tristan Wirfs. Chris Godwin's hurt again. He's got a fibula injury. Emeka Ibuka's out. Mike Evans has missed time. Bucky Irvin, who's a superstar running back, has been out the last 2 games. Won't play Monday night at Detroit. Like, the Ravens are missing a lot of guys like that. And what's happened to them? The Bengals are missing key guys. What's happened to them? Anybody that's missing key guys, their teams usually fall by the wayside. The Buccaneers have done just the opposite. They've gone the other way. And they've been unbelievable for it. And Baker is the real reason. He and Patrick Mahomes right now, through 6 weeks for whatever that's worth, they might be the favorites for the MVP right now. So we'll see. That's kind of where we're at. A lot of credit to Baker. Let's see how that works out here moving forward.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about it a lot, and it almost ends up becoming a cliche for some guys, but he legitimately wills them to win. Like, he just does. When it is winning time, there are few guys in the league right now that you would rather have than Baker Mayfield. I mean, that 3rd and 14 scramble on Sunday, like, that's the type of play that if things are maybe going sideways, like, I have no doubt in my mind after that, the Bucs were like, okay, well, this guy is not going to allow us to lose this game. And then we see what happens. 2 plays later, he throws the 50-yard touchdown to Tez Johnson, and it's like, okay, here they are. Here are the Bucs. Again, we've talked about, I don't know if a good formula for going really deep in the season is to be winning a lot of your games on the last possession. But guess what? You could be losing those games on your last possession too. And Baker he's heard everything. He's stacked those chips on his shoulder, and man, for a guy who's been very good for a good chunk of time here, he's playing the best ball of his career so far. It's remarkable, and he's so fun to watch. All right, Schefty, you said it. The Bucs may be the best team in the NFL right now. We haven't done that. We haven't done this yet this year, but let's go ahead and. Do you have a top 6 power rankings through 6 weeks here for the NFL?
I didn't look at this morning, but I do want to make this a regular thing on the 6th item of our 6-pack on Tuesdays. We're each going to give a ranking of the top 6 teams. Off the top of my head, I'm going to back up what I said on this podcast. I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs as the number 1 team in football right now. I'm going to take the Detroit Lions, who lost to the Chiefs, as number 2. I'm going to take the Los Angeles Rams as number 3. No one ever talks about the Rams as being one of the best teams. They just keep winning. They play in London this week against the Jaguars. I'm going to go with Baker's Bucks in the number 4 hole because I think they've been very impressive. We'll go with your Colts, who would be the top seed in the AFC today in that spot. And then the number 6 spot, we're going to go with the New England Patriots. New England Patriots. So Chiefs, Lions, Rams, Bucks, Colts, Pats. Like, that is not the top 6 teams that we thought we would be getting after 6 weeks of the season, Ty. What about you?
No, definitely not. Mine's pretty similar. I have the Bucks at number 1, Colts number 2, Lions number 3. I put the Seahawks at number 4.
I had them down on my list.
Yep, there were a couple that was almost a spot maybe where I said, like the Chiefs maybe, but I think the Seahawks have been very impressive, and them being in Seattle, I don't think they get enough shine or talked about as much as they probably should. I had the Packers at number 5. They didn't look great, but I think if they play their A game, they are one of the 2-3 best teams in the NFC. And then I also had the Patriots at number 6.
Okay. So New England's climbing up.
Yep.
Colts climbing up. Both have the Bucks up high. You have them 1, I have them 4. You don't have the Chiefs in your top 6, and I got them number 1.
I had the Chiefs at number 7, and it was very hard to, I wanted to maybe slide them up earlier or a little higher, but, I tried to take the recency bias out of it with how good they looked Sunday night. But like we've both said, we do this 2 weeks from now, I'm not so sure the Chiefs won't be number 1.
Yeah, you have the Seahawks and Packers in your top 6. I have the Rams.
Yep.
So, again, we'll see how this all plays out, but I think it might be a fun little feature for the Tuesday podcast, putting in the 6-pack of teams there, who we kind of like and who we don't like. All right, Ty, I got to tell you, like I said, I started this with the fancy basketball draft. I'm so pumped up. I have the 9th pick in the first round, 14 teams. I have the 20th pick in the second round, 14 teams. Already have an idea. I've scouted out who's going to go on the 8 picks in front of me. We'll see how this goes, but it's going to be a big, big night here in the Schefter household in my office here. Very, very fired up for that. Also, a big week ahead for Week 7. All right, I want to thank you, Ty Schmit, for leading another weekly 6-pack. I want to thank our great producer, Dan Stanzik, Ben Smith, Rob Lorenzo, all the people who help out, and you, the listener, for tuning into another Adam Schefter podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Adam Schefter podcast, and we'll be back in this spot Thursday for another bonus edition looking ahead to the big matchups in Week 7. Until then, have a great week, everybody.